now because it's 4:01. Okay, so I'd like to remind everyone of some of the instructions included in the remote meeting protocol. Everyone will be muted, and if you're asked to speak, you unmute yourself, speak, and hang on, bear with me. Oh, 2 seconds. I'm trying to read it off my screen because I couldn't print it. Okay, so everyone will be muted, and if you're asked to speak, you unmute yourself, speak, and mute yourself again when you're finished. If you have a question, press the virtual hand on the screen, and as chair, I'll invite you to speak one person at a time. Please do not begin speaking until I invite you in. If you have a comment to make, you should only raise the symbol of a hand when the chair asks for comments, and again, you'll be invited to speak one person at a time. If for any reason a member has cause to leave the meeting, then they must indicate this to the chair before leaving. Please raise your hand or send a message to the online chat. Okay, so it's 4 p.m. now. Can I please ask all officers and guests to turn off their cameras? You should turn on your camera and microphone when you speak, but please turn them back off again afterwards. Could I please ask Democratic Services to mute everyone and begin the recording? And I'm not quite sure where the red light is, Sian. Do you know where the red light is? Have we started recording? Yeah, I can see. Yeah, I can see it. Yeah, lovely. I can see it now. So we've started recording. Great. Okay, good afternoon. Welcome to the Governance, Performance, Business Change and Corporate Services Scrutiny Committee. It's a bit of a mouthful. On Tuesday, 22nd of September 2020. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and may be broadcast via the authority's internet site. Okay, the images and sound recording may also be used for training purposes within the authority. And then if we move on now and start going into the agenda, agenda item number 1 is apologies for absence.
Chair, apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Gareth Lewis and Councillor Andrew Barry and Mr Jeff Beard.
Lovely, thank you. Okay, any declarations of interest?
No declarations of interest received.
Lovely, okay, so moving on. So agenda item number 3, we've been asked by Scrutiny Support to switch around agenda items number 3 and number 4, purely because we need to agree the work programme before moving on to any other agenda items. So if we could cover agenda item number 4 first, and that's the draft work programme. If I could refer you to pages 13 of your report, pages 13 to 24. Okay, so this item seeks to present the draft work programme for review and consideration by the committee members prior to its approval. I'm assuming that everybody's had a chance to read the work programme, and today's meeting, the main goal is to secure approval for the work programme for the year ahead. So I've met with Maria previously to prepare the work programme. We did things slightly differently this year. Last year we held a little bit of a workshop and had everybody sort of feed in their recommendations, but this year we did it slightly differently due to the circumstances. So there were a few things that I just wanted to run by you, things that I discussed with Maria, but of course as a committee I need to run those by you and make sure everybody's happy and in agreement with them. So some of the things that I discussed with Maria was trying to make sure that because we've missed some of the meetings, that we were meeting our statutory requirements and that we could do so with the timeline that we had left. So the items that you see on the work programme in the report are making sure that we're meeting our statutory requirements, and we've made sure that they're standing agenda items. But what I was conscious of doing this time was I didn't want to overload the agenda with lots and lots of items. So as you'll see in the work programme, I've kept one item each month. And what I've said to Maria is that as we regularly review the work programme every month, we can slot in items as we see fit. So when you go down to the very bottom of the work programme, you'll see that there's a list of suggested items. So we'll slot those in as and when we feel like we need to. So I just wanted to keep the flexibility there, really. And not overload us with too many things, because these meetings are a little bit new to us and they are a little bit disconcerting. So I didn't want us to start having 3, 4, 5 agenda items and be overloaded. The other thing to make you aware of was last year we used an action tracker. So if you remember, it was just a way of us keeping track of any agreed actions and making sure that we were doing them in a timely manner. So it was about just keeping us accountable and keeping us on track, really. So I'd like to do that this year again, but I'd like to put it as a standing agenda item under any other business, just so we can make sure that we're revisiting that every meeting. So I can get your thoughts on that in a second. I can see Clive looks a bit quizzical. The other thing to make you aware of was as we normally do, we do the 4 key strands, so working life, best start to life, environmental, and I can't think of the other one off the top of my head. But what I wanted to do, what I was conscious of doing this year, was making sure that we don't forget about the huge unprecedented events that we've had this year. The floods being one of them, so which feeds into the environmental well-being, and the COVID-19, of course. So what I've asked Maria to do is, when the reports are being written, that we make sure that we put almost a COVID-19 lens over the report, so we can start to look at how we approached our response to the virus, things we could do differently in the future, if we're hit with a crisis that we weren't expecting again, what lessons have we learned this time that we can apply in the future? And I think that's it from my perspective in terms of the meeting I had with Maria. So I'll open it out to the committee now for comments and questions. So if we do some questions first. Clive?
Thank you, Chair. I frowned because you mentioned putting the action tractor after any other business.
No.
Is any other business is the last item?
Yeah, it was. I mean, I don't suppose I'm not precious about where it features, Clive. You know, I just want to make sure that we get it in there somewhere. I just thought of any other business because like you said, it's the last item, and it's just a way of us wrapping up the meeting, really, so we can clarify any actions, clarify where we are with everything. But if you feel that it would be better suited elsewhere, I'm happy to go with that. I mean, we could even put it in agenda item number 5 if you felt it fits better.
No, I think that if you place any other business is the last item on the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to put items on before any other business. I've got no problem with it being the last item before any other business.
I see what you mean. Okay. What I'll probably do then, Clive, rather than just trying to make it another agenda item, I'll just put it as under item number 5. So item number 5 is scrutiny referrals, feedback and follow-up actions. So if I add on there action tracker, then we'll just incorporate it there instead.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, lovely. Any other comments on the questions on the work programme, sorry? Is everybody happy with it? Does anybody have anything to add to the work programme? Is there anything anybody would like to put at the bottom for consideration over the next year? No? Okay, Sian, I've just noticed I can't see Claire, the co-optee. Is she not in? No?
Sorry, Chair, not to my knowledge, no. Not aware that she's sent an apology at all. Michelle, are you aware?
Chair, I've just noticed myself she's not in the meeting and there's no apology being received from her.
Okay, that's not likely. I wonder whether could we just possibly just give her a little email just to let her know that she was missed today, because she's usually very good at giving apologies if she can't come. Okay, any comments on the work programme? If not, we'll move on. Clive, have you got your hand up there?
Oops, sorry.
Okay, everyone happy to move on? Yeah. Okay, so moving on now, we'll move on to the other agenda item, which is the coronavirus. Oh, sorry, before we move on, I just wanted to make sure just wanted to go over the recommendation just to formalise it. The recommendation on the work programme was the committee considers the attached draft forward work programme, approves, revises or amends as it deems appropriate, and to consider the questions of 3.7 in planning for the next meeting. So if everyone is happy, I think we can agree that we've done that and we're all happy with it, and we've now approved the work programme to go forward. Yeah? Great. Okay, finally, moving on. Coronavirus update. Was that somebody, did somebody want to say something there? No? Okay, so agenda item number 3 is coronavirus update. It's the response and transition to recovery. This is in report pages 3 to 12 of your report, and this has come to us today as an opportunity for committee members to catch up with what has happened since lockdown. And for each scrutiny committee will be scheduled to receive a report outlining outlining the council's response to the coronavirus and subsequent lockdown and the key outcomes achieved and developing plans for recovery. So I know some of you chairs would have probably already covered this. So for today's meeting, committee members will receive the report, scrutinise and note its content, explore, consider and provide constructive challenge to the future recovery plans. My understanding is that Paul Lewis is leading on delivery of this report, and we have some other officers in the meeting, I hope, although I can't see them, to respond to specific questions. So is Paul in the meeting? Could we hand over to Paul? Can't see him.
Yes, Chair, I'm here.
Lovely. Okay, Paul, if you go ahead.
Councillor Bill Smith has got his hand up, Chair. I don't know if Councillor Smith wishes to raise a point before I commence.
Yeah, Bill. Your microphone is off, Bill.
I'm doing this all the time, folks, so don't find me. We had a scrutiny committee last week on this, on the quarter with the social services, and the committee went through it. They're quite happy the way it's done, or the way the officers worked it out. But since then, a lot of things have happened, and since we're going into another lockdown, we want to know what are the plans, what have we learned from the past, and what are we going to do to improve it as we go along. Okay.
Thank you, Bill. Paul, I think Councillor Smith does make a good point, and I made a note of it in the recommendations because, of course, this situation is so fluid, it's changing all the time. So I wonder whether whether we could sort of do the meeting, you could do your introduction as you normally would, but I don't think it would hurt to give a brief overview of the events of the last couple of days, and any effect it might have, and the main differences really, because I know that this lockdown will be different to the last one. So on that note, I shall hand over to you, Paul. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, members. If I can introduce some of the officers who are attending in the meeting this afternoon. We've got Lisa Emerson, who's from our Estates Department, Mark Price, who's from Revenue and Benefits, who's done a lot with the grant support to businesses. And we've got Hannah Brown, who's representing the Human Resources Department, all these are key members of our recovery subgroup. And hopefully in the report I can explain a little bit more detail what this group are tasked with doing. Chair, you've stolen my thunder to start with, is that this is such a wide remit, incorporating virtually every department within the local authority. We wouldn't be able to do it justice in terms of just this governance report. So I welcome what Chair has outlined, that I think each scrutiny committee will call the requisite areas to provide a more detailed response on the worker departments with COVID. Again, as Chair has alluded to, at the time of drafting this report, we were looking at a transition to recovery, but as the events in the last week have shown how quickly and how fluid the pandemic is, that we're very much now in a transition. We're still having a response element in how we work as an authority. As you're all aware, from 6 o'clock tonight, we go into a lockdown, which brings new challenges to the local authority and obviously to residents and businesses within the authority. What I'm hoping this report has been able to outline is the immediate response as an authority and how we reacted to the pandemic hitting Merthyr Tydfil, the way that we changed our working patterns, the way that staff adapted and the digital transformation, the way elected members changed how they worked with staff in terms of the issues and the community challenges. In terms of the report, I don't intend to go through it paragraph by paragraph, but perhaps pick out some relevant points within the report. If we start off with 4.5 within the report, it'll show the immediate challenges as an authority we had with lockdown affecting staff in terms of childcare provision, staff having to self-isolate, and the challenges we had as an authority in ensuring we kept an employee pool, adhere to social distancing, meet the needs of our staff in terms of welfare, while still maintaining a service to the public. So there's charts within paragraph 4.5 which outline some details across the different directorates of the challenges we had as an authority in ensuring our staff's well-being and service delivery. If I can take us on then to point 5.4, and there's some key infographics there on some of the work that was done across the authority during the COVID initial outbreak in terms of support to the public, messaging to the public, PPE supply, welfare checks that were carried out, and how we adapted very quickly and mobile as an authority in meeting a new demand and diversification of services. Staff were redeployed into emergency areas in order that we could meet the demands of our communities. In terms of a key change on how we adapted was Agile Working. I'm sure you've seen the announcement from Westminster today in terms of promoting home working. In Wales, that has been promoted since day one as a model that we should aspire to. And this is a key element within our recovery plan in ensuring that we have a dynamic workforce and service delivery. And as the chair alluded to, if there were future pandemics, that we future-proofing ourselves as an authority with a modern way of delivering services. So a key work for this recovery group is the recovery group has come from corporate management team tasking us to look at specific areas of work to ensure as a local authority that our staff and the way that we deliver services are modern, flexible, and it'll ensure going forward Merthyr Tydfil can deliver services should such a pandemic occur again. A key piece of work we're doing at the moment is Agile Working. Members, obviously, you're all dialing in on Teams today. We were one of the first authorities to work to this model. I think we were one of the first authorities to have virtual cabinet meetings, licensing meetings, and our IT department really worked night and day to get everybody up to speed in terms of laptop provision, access to Teams, which is obviously a new way of us meeting. And there was considerable work done to make sure the frontline staff were still able to deliver services, albeit through a digital platform. Moving forward, we are seeing hand in glove with the agile working environment is potentially reducing our corporate footprint and office space. Members will be aware that obviously we've got an improvement plan, and one of the key themes within the improvement plan is looking at commercialisation and looking at our corporate footprint and whether that presents itself with opportunities for savings or income generation. So the members who are with us today, Hannah Brown obviously led a lot in terms of the HR and the support network around staff with social isolation, childcare issues, COVID-19 related illnesses. Lisa is doing a lot of work in relation to the corporate footprint and how we can rationalise our office space better. Mark Price is here because obviously this is all internal workings of how we've delivered as a service, but in terms of meeting the needs of our community and our business within Merthyr Tydfil, there's a lot of work done getting grant support out to businesses, and I think at one stage we were one of the highest turnover of getting money into our frontline businesses that they could survive the pandemic. Mark can provide more detail on that. So in terms of recovery, as I say, we are still in response, unfortunately. But the plan that we've got in place is focused around staff planning, agile working, and future-proofing our workforce, rationalising building space to ensure that we are meeting our income generation targets and capital projects. And obviously there's detailed work going on in relation to schools recovery, business economy and infrastructure, and I know they've already been called to specific scrutiny committees to report on specifics around those service areas. So Chair, without going any further, I'll open it to yourselves to any questions or challenge, and obviously amongst the pool of officers here, hopefully we can provide the answers.
Okay, so is everybody happy to go into questions?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. So if we open up the floor, Councillor Salmon.
Thank you, Chair. I've got just a few questions. First of all, I know things are changing, but when is the front desk likely to be open? Would anyone have an answer for that?
It is a work stream in relation to opening the Civic Centre. A lot of the services that were provided through the contact centre are now being provided digitally, and there's risk assessments taking place in relation to what we need to open in terms of customers coming into frontline service as opposed to switching to digital channels. It is an intention to reopen the contact centre. Unfortunately, Andrew and Rebecca, who lead on this piece of work, couldn't attend the meeting this evening to provide specific content around that. But there are risk assessments taking place with regards to staff welfare and also looking at what services still need to be delivered at that front line.
Okay. Paul, just a quick one on that before I go on to another question. I did see in the report that there's more things being done digitally with members of the public. What is being provided digitally?
as diverse as there's been social work visits conducted via electronic means. Obviously, we've got the meetings have been conducted by Zoom and by Teams. We've also got a lot of reporting is now done via the internet and via our contact centre as opposed to physically coming into the building. Our housing services, homeless services have used diverse means of linking in with partner agencies such as Dyfodol and Barod. So we're still getting to meet our clients, but not necessarily through the contact centre. I think what we'd be able to do, Councillor Salmon, is via the various scrutiny committees, is each of the service areas will be able to give an overview of the service challenges they've had and give you specifics around their service delivery. But in terms of the group, one of the first things we did is through the senior leadership team, we assessed what services had stopped being provided. And the feedback we got from that is very few. I think the only ones that had actually ceased to be provided was proactive community engagement. So, for instance, youth services were unable to work at community centres. Some of our enforcement officers were unable to do house visits due to the lockdown. So it was very much the out in the community services had stopped. But in terms of reactive services to the public, through our feedback from SLT, there was very few services that had ceased.
It's just one more I've got now. I don't think I'm straying off topic on this, but correct me if I am. We've given a lot of support for businesses, but what about for residents? I think this is can be put under it's one of the four well-being objectives, well-being in the community. I've read an article lately from the public sector executive that up to 30% of residents in local authorities throughout the UK, England and Wales have been issued court summons over unpaid council tax. I know you can't get the figures off the top of your head now, but is this something you could let us know? Because I think obviously there was something there for residents that are struggling, but how many people have taken up, and how many summonses did we issue?
Without putting Mark on the spot, as we got Mark with us, perhaps I can invite Mark Price in, who obviously covers that area of work.
Good afternoon, Declan. In regards to the current financial year, recovery have ceased. We've only sent out, as far as council tax is concerned, we've sent out in July and August a soft reminder, just basically to advise people that the fact there is still a liability there. The magistrates' courts have also been closed for obvious reasons because of COVID-19, and at this particular point in time, that there's been no re-engagement with them. So obviously with recommencement, and we wouldn't be recommencing recovery to that extent without obviously the officer's decision on that. Because everything we've done thus far, we've obviously taken a softly approach with cabinet approval of the nature and the type of communication and the word in the communication that have been sent, and that's for council tax, business rates, and indeed sundry debts. So I hope that answers your question on there. With regard to, as you know, we got an internal enforcement team, all that has ceased as well. So we have sent the letters out of late just to basically make people aware regarding for liabilities for last year, but with regarding to actually pursuing people for money, that has not occurred at all, and certainly the last 6 months.
Lovely. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay. If I could come in, Councillor Sam, and Clive, I can see that you've got questions. If I could just clarify a couple of things for Councillor Salmon before we move on to Councillor Jones. One was, Paul, Councillor Salmon talked about the front desk. And as we're all aware, we've talked very much about businesses and the impact on businesses, but this would have had a massive impact on the people who use and rely on those frontline staff, particularly the elderly who don't use internet. So I know that you couldn't be specific in answering the question, but I don't want to just leave it there. I would like to push for, if we can, And maybe Paul, you could follow through on this for me and speak to the relevant officers. But if somebody could contact myself and Councillor Salmon, or if any, or in fact the committee, if they feel they'd like to, just on when those risk assessments, the timescales for those risk assessments, and when it's likely to happen. Because I'd like to see that happen sooner rather than later, because I feel that our elderly society has suffered enough. They're very isolated at the moment. Some of them, I know I only spoke to a lady this week, and she would normally go in the IT room in where she lives, but that's been shut. So they haven't even got internet access. They've got no contact with people whatsoever. So if Paul, if you could follow through on that for me and ask the relevant officers to contact myself and Councillor Salmon in the first instance with the with any timescales when those risk assessments are ready to be, when those risk assessments are likely to be completed, and if there's a timeline in terms of reopening that frontline service, that would be great.
What I can do, Chair, is I can escalate this to corporate management team as a key concern for this scrutiny committee in terms of opening the contact centre, and obviously get the requisite officer. I think it would be Andrew Mogford to respond directly to you with more detailed plans, and I'll ask him to respond to all members of scrutiny on this specific issue.
Yeah, lovely, because I think I speak for everybody where we'd all share the same. I think it's safe to assume we would all share the same concerns on that one. And then finally, before I hand over to Clive, it was just a follow-up deck on the council tax. On the work programme, we did put down, it came forward from last year. It came to my attention through Citizens Advice Bureau about our collections, the way we collect arrears. And so what I've done is I want that on this year's work plan. But I want it, like I've said with everything, I want that COVID lens very much put over it. So I hope that we can look at that in greater detail in the future. So that's just to say on the council tax, because I think that it was already an issue for us, but I think that this is going to become more of an issue for people. So with that in mind, I shall finally hand the floor to Clive. And then we'll go on. I can see Bill's hand is up. We'll go on to Bill. So Clive, questions? Your microphone is off, Clive.
Click it. How was that?
There we go. Brilliant.
In the report under section 5.1, you refer there to 477 staff are working remotely, 37% of the workforce. I presume that's excluding schools. That leaves 63% who are either frontline staff based in Unit 5 or the Civic Centre or elsewhere. Can you confirm that my assumption of the rest of the figures is correct?
Hello, Councillor Jones. I'm Hannah Brown from HR. The data that we've put into the report relates to, on a weekly basis, each manager is put in the status of where the staff are working. So at the moment, we've got 477 staff that are classed as working from home only, but there are some other statuses that means that some staff are working at home and they're also coming into the office. So some staff are doing a mixture on a rota basis. So the 477 staff, at that particular time, 30% were classed as working from home.
Right. So can you tell me, I know at one stage earlier on in the year, there was quite a high percentage, for obvious reasons, of staff who were isolating. and I know that figure has come down. Do you know what the current numbers, not the percentage, the actual number of staff who are isolating at the moment?
Yeah, I have got some up-to-date data at the moment. So I've looked at the data in terms of where people have started since August having more symptoms, or their family have been having symptoms. So since August through to the current date, we've had 32 staff that have submitted a form to HR. At the moment, we've had 12 staff that are isolating because they have had symptoms. 4 of those were positive, 4 were negative, and 4 are awaiting results. We've had 16 people that have had some family member having symptoms, so they have had a period of isolating as well. So that's not exactly the number of people that are off at the moment, but that's the numbers that we've had since August. At the moment, we've got 13 people showing as off, either isolating because they have symptoms or their family have symptoms. And we've had, out of those 32, 19 have already returned back to work because their isolation period has ended or there's been a negative result. So we are seeing at the moment, compared to the information we had back in the summer, some of those figures are obviously increasing as the number of tests have been increasing in Merthyr.
Thank you. Can I take you to 6.2, and you refer there to most staff have adapted well to the new ways of working, with a staff survey revealing 61% answered either strongly agree or agree to, and I quote, "I believe that working from home has enabled me to be more efficient in how I manage my time to complete my work." Could you tell me, because percentages sometimes don't tell you the true figure, that 61% is 61% of what? Is it the workforce excluding the schools, or does it include the schools? So it's clarification, really. I'd like to see the percentage in there, but the figures, the actual number of staff in brackets.
Yeah,
could you answer?
It's 61% of the staff that completed the survey. So the survey went to all staff that are working from home. I haven't got the exact figure in front of me, Councillor Jones, of the number of people that completed it, but I could get you that figure if you need that.
Yeah, I would be interested, because I don't know when this survey was undertaken, whether it was within the last 10 days or so, or whether it was a few weeks ago, because the number of remote working has gone up gradually.
Yes.
So it's I think it's important that we know what the percentage is of the figure. And
yeah.
you know, the same question really applies to 6.4, and it could go on and on with the percentages there. You know, again, 6.5 says 53% answer strongly agree or agree to, I quote, "I believe that working from home has increased my work productivity." So I don't get the sense of the numbers, exactly how many people we're talking about.
Yeah, the survey was sent to all staff that were working from home at that point in time. We did have quite a high number return the survey, but I'll be able to come back to you on the exact amount that returned the survey so you could get an idea of that figure.
Sorry, and when was the survey undertaken? Do you know that?
I believe it was the end of May, early June.
So you're talking, that's 4 months away. 4 months since it's done. Thank you.
Yeah, and as you said, the numbers have increased of the amount of people that are working from home as we move through the lockdown pandemic period.
Yeah.
Councillor Jones, if I could just come in there in relation to the point you've raised that this was conducted a few months ago. This obviously was a test for us to establish whether agile working was a model that would work for the council. So that's why the survey was done at a very initial stage, because if the feedback from that survey was negative and services were unable to be delivered or was inefficient, then obviously that would have affected our recovery group in pushing the agile working model. So the initial survey was very much a fact finding for us as to, is it working and is it something worth pursuing? And then from there, obviously, we're looking at agile working policies, we're looking at health and safety, at home working, and then how we can support staff in terms of well-being as well, in terms of still feeling inclusive with other staff. So this will be an ongoing piece of work. So I'm sure that survey will be repeated at some stage, as obviously agile working embeds itself into the authority.
I think the key to it is when this is all done and we've all been vaccinated and we come back to normality, I presume then you'll carry out a survey of everybody as to how they'll be interested in working permanently as an agile worker.
This is a key part of the recovery working group at the moment, is in terms of the message from Welsh Government and the WLGA, is this shouldn't be a temporary fix. We should be looking at this as how we will work moving forward. So a return to the norm, which was previous, shouldn't really be an option. We've been pushed into this new way of working by the pandemic. And if this now provides us with a more agile, flexible workforce and allows us to rationalise office space, then moving forward, it'll assist us in terms of the improvement plan for the authority in becoming a modern workforce. And obviously the benefit we would have from that is retaining staff, attracting staff, if we're offering a more flexible approach to service delivery.
Thank you.
Councillor Jones, if I can just answer your question about the number that completed the survey, I've just been able to find that out. There was 383 responses to the survey.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's one benefit of doing the meetings this way. Thank you, Hannah.
Okay.
We've got more information at our fingertips.
Yeah, I'll find the answer now.
Brilliant, thank you. Okay, Clive, are you done on your questions?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, Bill, would you like to go on with your questions and then we'll go to Gareth? Turn your microphone off, Bill.
All right. Paul, okay. On the reception of the town hall, the civic centre, I know you said you're going to take it to the senior management board, but this is the biggest complaint I have in my ward and everywhere I go, because people want to talk to people one-to-one. Right, and if you can take it forward, I'd be much obliged for it, because that's the biggest issue. The other question I got then, Paul, you mentioned that when the first lockdown about the youth working team were pulled away. I hope that we're going to look at that serious and not just close all the youth clubs down, because antisocial went through the roof in the beginning. And you know what happened? We've got no school for the last couple of months. They're getting a bit cocky what they're doing now. So that's a big issue again up with us. So I hope that we can do something. And what the time scale the lockdown made now, Have they give you a date how long it's going to be? Because I heard the 3 months. Is that
The feedback we've had at the moment, Councillor Smith, in relation to the localised lockdowns is they're reviewed fortnightly.
yeah.
Within the legislation, there is allowance for them to move quicker. So if for instance our figures were linked to a cluster that was controlled, I'm sure we wouldn't have to wait the full 2 weeks till the next review for Welsh Government to ease the restrictions. But at the moment, based on the figures that are coming through, it's going to be a fortnightly review, but without any sort of fixed long term how long that's going to be. There's obviously been central government further information today, and we're awaiting further information from Welsh Government this evening as to additional measures that they may be putting in also.
Thank you, Paul. Mark, on the business side of it, have we given all the money out and all the businesses apply for it that we've dealt with it on the voluntary sector?
What do you say? What sector? Sorry, Bill.
The business sector. All the people of businesses apply for grants, so we support them or on what they've applied for.
Right. Okay. Well, the closing date for it was the 30th of June. We're up to probably about 98% of those that have applied we've actually paid, and some of them were paid within days. As Paul mentioned a little bit earlier of the scheme, going operational. I think I've got at the minute probably around about 21 that we haven't paid because we're waiting on the valuation office to reassess because some of the properties have been split because we've had it done as one unit and they've been split into two. We weren't advised by the business community by quite a lot of changes in liability. It's been quite an interesting exercise on our part. But in answer to your question, I've got around about 21 at the minute. The problem is that until the valuation office actually puts in a value on the property and brings it into rating with effective date prior to the 20th of March, I can't really pay them. So there is a delay in some, but as I said, for those that have applied in due time and that were registered on a register as of the 20th of March, every single one of them have been paid. All these are, in effect, the new businesses that we've been made aware of, that we, as I said, we wait on the valuation office to provide us with additional information to ensure that obviously that the application is done correctly to report back to Welsh Government.
Mark, what about the voluntary sector then? And they apply for this grant or is it a different system?
Some have. There's a number of different grants that have been out there. There's the COVID-19 Business Support Grant, which is the 10 and 25,000, which was aimed at those who had a business rates presence. Some of them did actually fall within the voluntary sector, like the rugby clubs, football clubs, and some of the like OAP huts and things like that. And so they've come into that. There is also the Sports Council of Wales, which is obviously not done through the local authority, but it did have an impact. You've got the Economic Resilience Fund, which is administered by the Welsh Government, so that businesses, if they didn't qualify for one of within the other sectors, that they could apply and receive funding directly, from Welsh Government. So there are a number of different areas that businesses could apply for assistance. Now, going back to your question related to charity and the voluntary sector, initially for those who had a small presence then within ours and other areas, the Welsh Government basically said that they wouldn't be able to apply for assistance, that I couldn't help them. But they changed the goalposts as what they often do. Halfway through the scheme, so we went back then to the likes of Cancer Aid and some of the like the rugby clubs I mentioned, Dowlas Triaris, the OAP huts down in Quakers Yard, and just to name a few. So we've gone back to them and said, well, look, I can now help you. So that where assistance was available, we've helped as many as we possibly can in all sectors.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Bill, if I can come in there and not to steal from Councillor Lewis's upcoming Regen and Public Protection Committee, having a sneak preview of the report that's going there. We've assisted on the figures 459 businesses who were eligible to support with the rating scheme, and we were able to assist them with up to 6.5 million in support. So that gives you the sort of figures that in a very quick turnaround for such a small authority, the amount of businesses we were able to support and the amount of rate relief we were able to secure for them. So I think that's testament to, again, how quickly we diversified, acted and supported these businesses.
Paul, thank you much. Very good. Information people want you to see.
And Chair, again, the benefit of a Teams meeting, I was able to pull up another report while speaking to you. So again, it goes to show how recovery programme is working and digital transformation gets information to elected members far quicker.
These doubles boys, I don't know.
Sorry, Chair, you're on mute.
Yeah.
I was just saying, Paul, that actually it's reassuring to see something, even though it's a very small example, we're already a little bit more efficient. So that's really good. Bill, is there anything else?
No, great. I'll make a comment later.
Okay, so Gareth, questions?
Yes.
Welcome to the meeting, by the way.
Yes, and I must give my apologies for such tardiness. I shall endeavour to improve it from now on, Chairperson Tanya. With regards to staffing, have there been any instances where staff members have been on holiday abroad, and while they were abroad, they would have to return to quarantine because a decision was made that they must go into quarantine? If so, what would the situation be with them returning to work? Would they be allowed to return to work even if they showed no symptoms, working from home, that is?
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. At present, I haven't had notification of any staff that have had to go into quarantine after a holiday. The policy that we put in place when central government started the quarantine process on the 8th of June was that any holidays that were booked before the 8th of June, if they did go on that holiday but ended up having to be quarantined, then for those 2 weeks they would be paid. If anyone booked a holiday after the 8th of June, they were booking in the knowledge that if they were having to go into quarantine on return from their holiday, then because they booked it after the 8th of June, then they would either have to take that as annual leave or paid leave. They wouldn't be able to work from home if they usually work from home, because we didn't deem that that would be fair process across all roles in the council. So we took the decision that even if you could work from home, you would have to take 2 weeks extra annual leave or unpaid.
That's fine. Thank you. It makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, is that all your questions, Councillor Lewis?
Yeah, that's it. Great. Thanks, Tanya.
Okay, so Councillor Jones, Councillor Smith, have you got more questions before we move on to comments? We go to Councillor Jones first.
No.
Okay, so if we go into comments. Bill, have you got a comment? Turn your microphone off, Bill.
Can you hear me now? Are you the same comments? I'm going to say in social services what I do better now, because people don't understand that the way lockdown, what work our officers had to do, and the council had to get things in place to take it forward. It wasn't just a lockdown, you shut the door. There were services, we had people to look after, we had to look after children, we had businesses, with everything all in one ball to take it forward, all in 3 months. And they done, be honest, I would support the officers, the officers and the management team have done a tremendous job, in my view. Other people might have different views, but for 3 months, the way they done it, and when people try, it was hard because people had to stay in. You know, by staying in for a week or fortnight, you know what happens, everything happens, too many kids about, you're doing this wrong. But I think they've done a tremendous job. And I think we should support them.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Okay, any other comments, Bill?
No, I'm happy with that.
Okay, Councillor Lewis?
Apologies, my hand was up by mistake.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, from my perspective as chair, I'd just like to support what Councillor Smith said. Really, I think our staff have worked hard in unprecedented times. I can't imagine what it must have been like in those first few weeks in the Civic Centre and all our offices, really, because we were all shell-shocked at home and trying to come to terms with it. And it's been a massive roller coaster for all of us, I'm sure. So we're having to deal with running a local authority and keeping everything on track must have been a mammoth task. So yeah, absolutely, credit where credit's due on that one.
Chair,
And just
Chair, sorry, I tried to put my hand up, but I wasn't quick enough.
Ah, okay, go ahead, Clive.
I entirely agree with you and Councillor Smith. I think that the whole of the staff need to be congratulated. We're all in completely unusual times that probably none of us will ever experience again. But I think the staff have got up to the mark and have done an absolutely remarkable job since the original lockdown on the 23rd of March. Thank you.
Yeah, and just one other thing to say on the end of that was, when I first became a councillor, I remember we had emergency planning protocols come to council, and for the more seasoned councillors, they'd be even more familiar with our emergency protocols. But I imagine there was never anything in those protocols that would ever have prepared us for this sort of thing. So, it really, really was something that hit us all for six. And I think on the whole, we've done really well. I think for us moving forward as a scrutiny committee, this is the perfect opportunity now to do that lessons learned agenda item, make sure that features in all our reports going forward. And try and take something that was really negative for many and turn it into something positive and be really proactive going forward. And I think that I mentioned it at the beginning of the meeting. I think all our reports in those 4 strands, so if you think of living well, best start to life, working life, well-being in the community, those reports now won't look, would hope that they won't look the same anymore. So even in this first meeting, we've all started to talk about and question, Councillor Smith talked about ASB, Councillor Salmon talked about the impact, and Councillor Jones commented on the impact of those front desk services. So I think going forward, every report we receive, particularly in those 4 strands, will look more closely at the impacts and what we can do as a local authority to respond more positively towards it. This is just the start, and I think it's been a positive start. So thank you to all the officers who attended today. If there's no other comments, then we can move on. Any other comments? No? Okay, so just to go over the recommendations from this particular agenda item, there were two recommendations, I believe. Bear with me a second because I've got to keep switching. Oh, this is hard going. I don't know about you guys, but I didn't have papers this time, and it's been really, really tricky trying to switch between the screens. So bear with me 1 second. So the recommendations were the committee members would receive the report note the actions taken by the Council in response to the pandemic, and recommendation 2.2, which has already changed, is committee members consider the future plans to respond to the phased relaxation of lockdown, which no longer exists, and how the Council will work differently to meet the needs of the new norm. So if everybody's in agreement, I think that we've more than done that today. And like I said, this is just the start. So is everybody happy to move on?
I move, Chair.
Lovely, thank you, Clive. Okay, so moving on to agenda item number 5, which would be scrutiny, referrals, feedback and follow-up actions. Sian, if you could come in here. I believe the only action we've got today in terms of follow-up, because some of them were done as we went, was the timescales on opening up those front desks. Is that right?
Yeah, I've picked up a few things.
Okay.
That one was correct there. It was with regard to the risk assessment, to when would they be done, and I think Paul then came in and he said he would escalate that to CMT, and as soon as they find information back, he will come back through to you, whether it be via Andrew doing that from CMT, but that's one of the actions I've got written down. You rightly so, Hannah Brown very kindly gave us the number of responses that came through from the questionnaires, which was 383 responses. We've also agreed, whether it's the right time to say this now, about the action tracker. Going forward, we'll bring that up, and that's what we'll review the actions taken previously within this agenda item, to the specific scrutiny, referrals, feedback and follow-up actions. Another little thing I've noted down here is just to note that all reports going forward should have that COVID lens, or be seen through the COVID lens for whatever topic they're discussing, because obviously this has impacted every corners of the council and how we work. There's another little thing that I've noted as well, is that when we have the next pre-meet, we'll just do it that little bit, we'll shunt it on that little bit later for Councillor Gareth Lewis, and for anybody who come in a little bit later, we've agreed to revert back to the standard time of the pre-meet, which will be 3:30 going on forward, as the members collectively decided that little half hour in between was no longer needed, because you're all so well versed in all technologies and you didn't need it. But I think that's what I've captured. I don't know if anybody else, have I missed anything?
I think that's fine from my perspective, Sian. The only thing I would say is where we got the COVID lens, if we could put something in there about lessons learned as well. Just so we, and what I'll do in the meantime is I'll work with Maria separately, because I'd like to make sure that we get the structure right with the future reports, because making a statement of a COVID lens is very ambiguous. So I want to make sure that we get into the detail of that a little bit more. But I'll do that separately with Maria. But otherwise, unless anybody else, I can see Bill's put his hand up. Bill, did you want to add something?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Look, you made a comment earlier on that you didn't have papers.
Yeah.
Well, that happened in the last week's committee, so I spoke to Anne Taylor. I think she could be listening. And Anne said, if you tell her you want the papers, she print them out for you.
Okay.
Right?
I know.
Because
I mean,
it's a bit. Because I tried a split screen. I can't see the words. I'm blind as a bat. So when you can, and as a chair, you can't see the split screen and you can't see the committee. So I think we got to look how we conduct our meeting ourselves to have the information, because if you haven't got the papers and you can't read it, you're not doing the job, are you?
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Bill. I found really hard this meeting to go without my report and try to do it electronically, because I realised that's the way we need to be working. But it has been a real challenge. I had to print out certain bits at home, bits that I found that I absolutely needed. And then I tried to do the split screen and go back and forth, but it's It's not the same as having papers. So I think I'm gonna have to be old-fashioned, Bill, and have my papers, I think.
I'm gonna join you, Chair, because I don't see. I'll be honest, you can't hold a meeting and I can't read.
Yeah, it just makes it more difficult, and it might be with practice it gets easier, but I don't know. I think with this year ahead of us as a committee is going to be challenging enough without having to worry about papers and screens and everything else. So yeah, I think I'll be using papers, but thank you, Sian. Okay, so moving on. Number 6, reflection and evaluation of the meeting. Hopefully it hasn't been too stressful for anybody. I think we've done really well considering it's our first one back. Any observations or comments from anybody?
That's all I'm going to say. It's very interesting what the officers are doing and how much grants we've taken out. Because we haven't had that information.
Yeah, absolutely, Bill, and I think it'll be interesting in future meetings when we start to sort of. So I know, Bill, you mentioned about the grants that have gone to third sector organisations. I would expect to see more detail on those in the Wellbeing in the Community report, and I think as we go on, that we'll get that wealth of detail in future reports. So it'll be interesting to see that. Any other comments on the reflections of the meeting? No? Okay, so then the only other thing is any other business, and there's just a couple of things to make you aware of under any other business. Bear with me, I need to get my screen up again. Okay, so there were a couple of things on any other business. One was when I spoke to Maria, we looked at the corporate plan, which will be coming up later in the year, and the plans, bear with me, where is it? Sian, which other one is this? The annual performance report and the corporate plan. So those are 2 documents that historically have come to us as a committee, and they usually come to us in the final stages. But what Maria has suggested this year, and I'm assuming is part of the plan with CMT, is that as a committee we actually take a more sort of a more shaping approach this year. So there's a suggestion that we have a couple of short workshop style meetings. So instead of us feeding in and scrutinising at the end, we actually start to shape and scrutinise while those reports are being formed. So I just wanted to run that by you as a committee, just to see whether anybody had any objections to that way of working. I think personally it's much more effective, and it saves officers having to go back and change things afterwards. And it gives us more ownership as a committee in terms of shaping those things. So that was one thing there that I discussed with Maria. And then the other thing to make you aware of, have I got anything else? Bear with me a second.
Chair, just the self-evaluation and the SOAPs that will be coming up in the horizon.
Yes, now I did have that down, Sian, but we haven't got any co-optees here today. So I don't know whether you want to just quickly do a brief, run through of that. It's going to be slightly different because, of course, the co-optees aren't here. But Sian, if I could hand over to you and you do a brief run through of that one.
Yeah, I think there was quite a few of you who were actually at the training session or meeting that Andrew that we put together and Andrew chaired not so long ago. Basically, it was to inform the chairs that because of we're all aware that we have, along with the recovery and transformation and improvement plans that's going to the assurance board, a part of that is to improve governance as well, the corporate governance. Within that, self-evaluation actually comes in as a part of that corporate governance improvement, because by completing the self-evaluation, it helps officers and departments and chief officers to understand where they are, to know what they need to do to improve. So basically what we've done is we are looking to extend that self-evaluation as a part of the governance to the scrutiny committee members, and that would include all the elected members plus the co-opted members. I'm not sure whether Claire's actually joining us. There's a BC at the bottom there. I don't know whether that's Claire, but it's just to inform you and just to reassure you, within most of your own scrutiny committees, you've encountered the self-evaluation reports that has come to committee, and you can understand. Yes, thank you, Claire. You can understand that a lot of work has gone into the reports that they've done, because the self-evaluation that the officers undertake is quite comprehensive. It's split over 3 questions, and because it's quite comprehensive, they tackle them a question at a time. However, when it comes to ourselves in scrutiny and the members undertaking the self-evaluation, it's a much more streamlined approach. It won't be as intricate as the officers have undertaken. Basically, it will comply of a questionnaire. Now, we would like all of the members of the scrutiny committees to undertake the questionnaire. It will probably take you within the region of 10 to 20 minutes, all depending on how many additional comments you put on it. It really isn't at the level of what the officers have had to undertake. Saying that, it will give us information of how we can, where we are currently as within the governance of the scrutiny, and where we can then look to improve. So what we intend doing, and we've spoken to the chairs previously, is to roll out the questionnaire, the self-evaluation questionnaire, probably around the November time, due to the COVID work, and obviously we're not quite sure what's around the corner with this new lockdown and what extra additional work and things that would need to go on. But initially we looked at rolling those out around about November time, with the view that we could then analyse them around December, Christmas time. And what we would do then, we would come back and have, again, like a workshop where we would then tell you what the result of the analysis from the self-evaluation. So that analysis then would be kind of themed up. So whatever individuals put on their self-evaluation, it's not something that you would see the individuals. It would be rounded up and themed up, so we could tell roughly what direction we need to go to improve. From that analysis, what we would do then, we would build and develop together within the workshop the basis of our own strategy on a page. So by having that SOAP, that strategy on a page, which you've all seen the chief officers have got, we'll be able to then monitor through a system of measures how we've improved through the governance element of the scrutiny. So again, it's all with the theme to strengthen our governance corporately via the scrutiny section, the scrutiny department. I hope that makes sense. As I said, it's just to reassure you, it's not at the level as have you seen previously. It is a far more streamlined approach that is not onerous whatsoever, but it will be really helpful for us to understand where we are and where we need to strengthen.
Okay.
Is okay?
Lovely, thank you, Sian. And and obviously to Democratic for all the support leading up to the scrutiny meeting. And is there anything else anybody would like to say? Any comments before we end the meeting? No? Okay, lovely. Well, thank you all for your time this afternoon, and I hope you and your families are all keeping well. Everybody stay safe, and I'll see you all soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Tanya. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.